I saw him again last night, and this time he wasn't alone. Not only that, but now I know for sure that I'm not going crazy like I originally thought, because my 6-year-old son Asher saw him too. We were sitting on the couch in the living room last night. We just finished eating dinner and Asher wanted to watch his favorite cartoon, SpongeBob SquarePants, before it was time to start getting ready for bed. I was exhausted. I had a long day at work, and after checking my emails, I began to doze off. I wasn't in a deep sleep. I heard Asher when he got up to go to the bathroom. Then once he returned, I heard him playing with his action figures, slamming them together, pretending that they were fighting. I even heard him whisper, "Mom, are you up?" once the episode was over. I know he was hoping that I wouldn't answer so that he could stay up a little later, which usually I would probably let him. But like I said, I was so tired. So I told him to clean up his toys and go brush his teeth. Then I got up from the couch and began my nightly ritual of walking around the house checking to make sure that all of the doors and windows were locked. Once I was finished, I grabbed a bottle of water, turned off all of the lights except for the outside ones, and then headed upstairs to tuck Asher into bed. As I walked past the bathroom, I saw that the light was off and it was empty, so I knew he had to be in his bedroom waiting for me. As I approached the door to his room, I heard him talking. At first, I thought he was just playing with his toys while he waited for me to come in, but as I listened to what he was saying, it sounded like he was talking to someone, which instantly sent a chill down my spine because we were the only ones in the house. I only heard his voice, but the questions he was asking made it seem like someone else was in the room with him. And the even stranger thing was that after he'd say something, he'd wait a few seconds like he was listening to a response, and then he'd say something else. I burst into his room. "Hey bud, who are you talking to?" I asked him with a smile as I set my water bottle down on his dresser. He freezes up like he just got caught doing something wrong. As I look around the room, it's obvious that he's alone, so I don't push the issue anymore, figuring maybe he has an imaginary friend that he doesn't want me to know about. I know he's a little old for that. I had one when I was a kid, but I was around 2 or 3 at the time. So I proceeded to tuck him into bed and then kiss him goodnight. But just as I grab my water bottle, turn off the light, and step out into the hallway, a slight chill fills the air and he stops me. "Mom, wait. Can you leave it open a crack?" "Sure, bud, but is everything okay? You usually don't mind that I close the door." He glances across the room and his eyes come to rest on something near the closet. I step back inside and just as I'm about to turn the light back on, I see it. A shimmer of mist that slowly starts to diffuse, causing the air to appear warped and twisted. Through it, the closet door and everything surrounding it becomes slightly out of focus, making it look similar to a poorly taken photograph. My heart starts beating out of my chest, and I dash across the room, scoop Asher up into my arms, and prepare to run. Then in a flash of pale silvery light, slowly it begins to come into focus like an object being looked at through a telescope. The closet door slowly creaks partially open, and a little girl appears before us. She looks to be around my son's age. She's wearing a pretty little sundress. It's a pale blue color with purple flowers all over it, and she's clutching a rag doll tightly to her chest. She looks scared. No, petrified is a better word. Then suddenly her eyes start brimming with silver tears and she begins to whimper. Asher looks up at me and he must notice the fear in my eyes. "Mom, it's okay. She's not going to hurt us. She's really nice." "You can see her too?" I ask in disbelief. He nods his head. "She's my friend. Her name is Elise, and I think she's lost. She told me that she's looking for her mommy." Before I can respond, the chill that filled the room grows even colder. Then I start to notice the shape of a man standing behind her inside of the closet where the door is cracked. I recognize him as the same man that I saw just a few nights ago. I was walking down the hallway to my bedroom and out of nowhere he just appeared standing at the end of it. At first I thought I was seeing things because after I blinked my eyes a few times, trying to see through the darkness, and then looked again, he was gone, so I just brushed it off at the time. But seeing him again now tells me that he's definitely real, and what I thought I saw the other night actually did happen. But I have no idea who he is, or why he's suddenly just shown up here in my house. But one thing I can say is that his dark presence is truly terrifying. There's something about him. I can tell that he's a very bad man. From what I can make out in the dark closet, he's standing behind the little girl, his tall frame towering above her with a stern look on his bearded face. His piercing, bloodshot, yet soulless eyes twitch uncomfortably beneath his unbrushed, greasy, jet black hair. A false, creepy grin tugs at the corners of his mouth. The only way I can think of to describe it is by saying that it reminds me of the smile of a predator. His appearance is so vivid to me, it seems like he's standing right here before me. Immediately, the girl tenses up and I can see the fear in her eyes. Just as she mouths the words, "He is here," the chill that filled the room disappears, and so do they. I rush over and cut on the light as Asher says to me, "Mommy, that man was scary." "Yeah, bud, he was," I whisper as I hug him tightly. Then as an extra precaution, I push open the closet door really quick so that Asher won't be terrified thinking that the man is still hiding in there, and I find nothing but clothes and toys. But I seem to be more frightened of what just happened than he was. I didn't know whether to feel relieved that he saw them too, so now I knew I hadn't just imagined seeing the man like I had thought, or to feel terrified, wondering why these ghosts are here in my house. I didn't think that my house was haunted. I mean, I've lived in it for 12 years, since before Asher was even born, and I'd only just started to see this man, and now the little girl. I let Asher sleep in my room with me that night. He said that he wasn't afraid, and I told him that I was proud he was being so brave, but I was scared to death. He also told me that he'd seen Elise a few times before tonight, but that this was the first time he'd ever seen the man. "Why didn't you tell me about her?" Shrugging his shoulders, he answers, "I don't know. I thought you wouldn't believe me. She said that grown-ups can't see her, so I thought if I told you and you couldn't see her, then you would think I was lying. But I saw her tonight." "Yeah, I know. I think that scary man lied to her. She said he was the one who told her that." I make him promise to tell me if he sees either of them again. The next morning, I wake Asher up, make breakfast, and then tell him to go get dressed. We have a busy day ahead of us. I've planned for us to go shopping to pick up some party decorations because his birthday is only weeks away, and then after that we're going to attend a book fair at his school later this afternoon. I expect him to be ready to go before I know it. He's usually really excited to get out of the house for a while, and ever since we got the new car a few weeks ago, he's always trying to get me to take him somewhere. But when I realize that I'm dressed and ready to go before he is, I head to his room to see what's taking so long. When I enter, he's sitting on the bed with a sad look on his face. I walk over and sit down next to him. "Hey, bud, what's the matter?" "Elise doesn't want me to go. She wants me to stay here with her. She's scared to be alone with that man." "Wait a minute, you saw her again? Did she tell you that?" He nods his head. I pause for a moment, not sure what to say. Then I ask, "What about the man? Was he with her?" "No, I didn't see him this time." I glance around the room as a chill runs through me. "Do you know if that man is her daddy? Did she ever tell you that?" "No, but I don't think he is." "Why not?" "Because why would she be so afraid of her own dad?" "Unfortunately, bud, not everyone has such a good daddy like you," I tell him as I pull him close and squeeze him tightly. As I wait for him to finish getting dressed, I sit there thinking to myself, I'm going to have to do something about this. Maybe call a priest, a medium, a paranormal investigator or something, because I can't let this go on any longer. Once Asher's ready to go, we grab our coats, and before heading to the car, I tell him to clean up his toys that he left out on the porch. As he grabs a pile and starts heading toward his room, I sweep the leaves and dirt off the porch. When he returns a minute later, he just stands there in the doorway. Asher, what are you doing? Come on, bud, we've got to get going. You don't want to be late for the book fair, do you? Then he points up at his bedroom window. So I look up at the slightly pushed aside curtain and faintly see the little girl's face peeking out. She has one hand pressed up against the window pane, and she's yelling something that I can't quite make out. Mommy, she's really sad. She doesn't want me to go because then she'll be here all alone. Well, why don't you invite her to come with us? I already did, but she's afraid. As worried as I am about Asher and the fact that he can talk to this little ghost girl, I brush it off for now. It takes a few more minutes of coaxing, but finally, after promising that I'll buy him a milkshake while we're out, he finishes cleaning up his toys. As he starts walking inside with the last pile, he drops a bunch of them. Can you help me, Mom? Just as I bend down to pick them up, I feel a burning sensation across my wrist. I wince and drop the toys, then grab a hold of my hand and roll up the sleeve of my dress. There are 3 distinct, bright red scratch marks running in parallel lines across my wrist. Mom, Elise said we should leave now before that man won't let us go. I reach into my purse and pull out some tissues. Once the bleeding slows down a little, I cover the scratches with 2 band-aids, then tell Asher, just throw the rest of the toys in the living room. You can take them up to your room when we get back. I'm getting a bad feeling. Let's get out of here. I close and lock the door, and just as I'm walking down the steps to the car, I glance back and see through the window the man standing there with an angry scowl on his face. I race toward the car thinking, he must have scratched me, but why? Although I can't stop thinking about what happened before we left, Asher and I have a great day out, but then as soon as we return home, the first thing he wants to do is run straight up to his room. Usually I wouldn't mind, I have to get started cooking dinner anyway, but I don't really want him to be alone up in his room anymore. I don't know what that man is capable of. He's clearly dangerous, and I don't want him to harm my son. So I tell Asher to stay downstairs with me. He isn't very happy that he can't go play in his room, but I distract him by playing a game of Monopoly Junior with him, and then he watches some TV while I finish cooking dinner. Once dinner's ready, I call him over. Hey bud, it's time to eat. I'm not hungry. Well, you've got to eat something if you want some of those cookies we bought, I tease with a smile. He pauses for a second, then asks, Can I have 2? I want to give one to Elise. Sure, I tell him, playing along, knowing that he'll be the one eating both of the cookies. He doesn't talk much at dinner, which is highly unusual for him. He's always got so much to say. Asher, is everything all right? He shakes his head no. Well, what's wrong, bud? He remains quiet. Come on, you can talk to me. I'm your mom, you can tell me anything. After a moment he answers, That man, he hurt Elise. When? Today after we left? He takes a few bites of his mashed potatoes, then continues. I don't know if it was just today, but she wants me to help her. Help her do what? I ask, sounding a little worried. I told you, she can't find her mom. She said that she looks for her all of the time, but she's just too hard to find. I change the subject, but that night when it's time for bed, I tell Asher to go lie down and watch TV in my room while I straighten up the kitchen. Then I call my mom and tell her what's been going on. She says that if I'm that bothered about it, then I could always just sell the house and move. But I don't know how much good that would do. Like I said before, I've lived here for 12 years, and the ghosts just recently showed up. Also, after Asher's dad passed away a little over a year ago, I made a promise to myself that I would never sell this house. This is the house that we bought together after we got married, and the only one that Asher has ever known. My husband loved this house, and I fell in love with it too. We both wanted Asher to grow up here, and even though he's gone now, I still want to fulfill that wish. After I've cleaned up, I head to bed. Asher's already fast asleep, so I cut off the lights, but leave the TV on and muted, then crawl into bed. It doesn't take long for me to get to sleep, but then around 3 a.m. I'm startled awake by the sound of my bedroom door creaking open. At first, I think Asher must have gone to use the bathroom, but when he kicks me in my back a moment later, I leap up, turn on the light, and look toward the door, but no one is there. As my heart starts to beat a mile a minute, I creep over and peek out into the hall. I shiver because it's freezing cold out there. When I don't see anything, I quickly close the door and then get back into bed. But just as I'm sliding back beneath the covers, my bedroom door creaks open yet again, and then slams shut just as I turn to look. I get up again, and just as I'm about to open the door, I hear the faint sound of a little girl crying. I place my ear up against the door and can make out that in between her sobs, she's screaming and begging for help. And then she calls for her mother. My gut is telling me that it's Elise. Immediately, I yank open the door and step out into the hallway to go check it out. As soon as my foot touches the floorboards, a chill shoots through me. I close the door behind me, hoping that Asher doesn't wake up and hear what I heard. Then I tiptoe down the hallway toward the kitchen, sweat now forming on my brow because I'm so scared. This man ghost has already viciously scratched me, and I'm pretty certain that he isn't afraid to take it further. When I make it to the end of the hall and turn to walk into the kitchen, I halt right there in my tracks. Standing across the room is the tall, dark, menacing silhouette of the man. He's standing there, completely still, just staring right at me. His eyes watching me like he's the wolf, and I'm just his weak little prey. For a moment, all is silent as we both just stand there looking at one another. And then suddenly, he just turns around, and just as he disappears, I hear the click of a door locking. I turn and race back down the hall to my room. When I twist the knob, I freeze. I hear a little girl's voice whisper through the door. "I won't let him get you." There's no way Asher would have locked this door. First of all, he knows that's not allowed in our house, and second, he was asleep when I just left. I stand there debating whether I should start banging on the door. I don't want to scare him half to death. So instead, I knock loudly. "Asher! Asher, honey, can you open the door for Mommy, please?" After a minute of calling for him, I finally hear him get out of bed and start trudging over to the door. "Why did you lock the door?" he asks sleepily. "I must have done it by accident," I tell him as I walk him back over to the bed and tuck him in. I barely get any sleep that night. A few weeks pass by without any more incidents, and Asher's birthday arrives before we know it. I bake his cake the night before. Once I cover it in aluminum foil and place it in the fridge, I tell Asher that it's time for bed because we have to get up early tomorrow morning to go to church. So after tucking him into my bed, which is where he's been sleeping every night now, I settle down on the sofa in the living room and wait for him to fall asleep. Once the show I'm watching ends, I turn off the TV, then go check on him and see that he's out like a light. So I pull out all of his gifts and wrapping paper. Just as I start to wrap the first present, the TV in the living room suddenly turns back on. I look up, expecting to see Asher out of bed, but when I do, there's no one there. I walk over, pick up the remote, turn it back off, and then go back to what I was doing. Then, as I start tying a bow around the gift I just wrapped, the TV cuts on again. That's when it hits me. Just like I thought it was Asher who had turned it on the first time, this seems like a game that a child would play. So after a moment I ask, "Elise, is that you, sweetie?" When I don't get a reply, my face flushes with embarrassment because I feel kind of silly even asking. But then a moment later, the TV turns back off. I get back to wrapping the rest of Asher's presents, then sit them on top of the dining room table so that they're the first thing he'll see tomorrow morning when he comes to get breakfast. Then I lock up everything for the night and get ready to head to bed. While I'm in the bathroom washing my face, suddenly I peer into the mirror and see that it appears to be somewhat distorted. I wipe the steam from it, then rub my eyes and look again. That's when the image starts coming into focus. Elise is there, clutching her rag doll and crying. When she realizes that I see her, she starts shaking her head no. But I don't understand what she's trying to tell me. Then just as my phone starts to ring, she vanishes. Just as I'm about to answer, I hear a loud crash come from the kitchen, and then something goes rolling across the floor. I put my toothbrush down and walk out there to check it out, and find Asher's skateboard that I just wrapped lying all the way in the living room, and all of the other presents are strewn throughout the dining room, kitchen, and living room. My body floods with anger and fear as I do the only thing that I can. I kneel down and begin to clean everything up. Luckily, I have some leftover wrapping paper, so I rewrap them all and decide that I'm going to keep them in my bedroom with me for the night. Then I turn off all of the lights and start heading toward my room, when suddenly I feel a sharp pain in my ankle. It catches me off guard and hurts so bad that I drop the gifts and the paper rips, sending the skateboard rolling across the floor for a second time. The hair on the back of my neck stands up as I crouch down and grab a hold of my bleeding ankle. I can feel someone lurking behind me, a dark, ominous presence. His presence. Apprehensively, I turn around, and there he is, standing, towering above me. When I get up to run, he grabs me by my ponytail and throws me down the hall into the living room. I crash into the wall, causing picture frames to fall and the glass in them shattered. Then I see the man making his way toward my bedroom, where Asher is sleeping. So I get up, but just as I'm about to run, bloody handprints the size of a small child's hands start appearing all the way down the hall, covering the walls, floors, and ceilings. As I go darting down the hall, trying to maneuver my way around them, I slip, and the handprints smear together, making it now look like a trail of blood. Then I hear Asher scream my name, and my heart starts to pump so hard I feel like it's going to bust right out of me. I get back up and finally make my way to my room, then burst through the door. "What's wrong?" I ask out of breath, frantically looking around, thinking that the man must have come inside and scared him or tried to hurt him. But he tells me that he didn't see the man. He just woke up and noticed I was gone and got scared, so that's why he yelled for me. I hug him tightly and decide that tonight we're staying in a hotel. So I pack a bag for each of us and then we head to the car. The next morning, after getting a good night's sleep without any more incidents or weird feelings, we get some breakfast downstairs in the lobby of the hotel and then get dressed for church. Once the service is over, I decide to return home. We're supposed to be going to my mom's for Asher's special birthday dinner, but before we head over there, I've decided to dig a little deeper and try to find out if anyone knows who these ghosts in my house are. I tell Asher that we're not going inside, so he sits on the porch reading a comic book while I ask a few of my neighbors who've lived in the neighborhood longer than I have if they knew the family that lived in the house before us. One of them does remember the previous occupants of the house. Mrs. Busby from next door tells me, "Oh yes, honey, the Donahues used to live there. There was Mr. and Mrs. Donahue, and then they had 2 children, a son and a daughter. Do you remember if the daughter's name happened to be Elise?" She stops her gardening to think about it for a moment. "Oh, that was so long ago. It could have been, but I can't be sure." "All right, thanks so much, Mrs. Busby. Sorry I couldn't be of more help, sweetie." Next, I head down the street towards another one of my neighbor's houses. I wave as I walk up, but he doesn't see me. "Good afternoon, Mr. Robbins. I'm so glad I ran into you. I wanted to ask you something." He lowers his newspaper and glances at me over the top of his spectacles that are resting on the brim of his nose. "How can I help you? Asher didn't kick one of his balls into my rose bushes again, did he?" "Oh, no, sir," I say as I climb the stairs leading up to his porch and then sit down in the chair across from him. "I was wondering if you knew a little girl named Elise who used to live in my house before we moved in. She would have been around Asher's age." He thinks about it for a moment, then replies, "Why are you asking?" I sit there, hesitant to tell him about what's been going on, but then figure, why not? I know this probably sounds crazy, but I've been seeing ghosts in my house. A little girl and a man. Asher saw them too. The little girl even spoke to him and said that her name was Elise and that she's looking for her mother. I'm just trying to find out who they are and why they suddenly started showing up in our home, or if I'm going crazy and losing my mind. He stares me right in the eye, then replies, "Wait here for 1 minute. I want to show you something." When he returns, he's holding a pile of newspaper articles. He sits back down and begins rummaging through them. Then he hands one to me. The date at the top is 23 years ago, and the headline states, "7-year-old little girl kidnapped from local park." I continue to read. 7-year-old Elise Donahue disappeared from a local park in St. Louis, Missouri over the weekend. Witnesses, which include other children who were playing there, say that they last saw her talking to a man that none of them recognized. Her mutilated body was found 3 days later, 20 miles away. A nearby gas station surveillance camera captured an image of a black 1990 Honda Civic with what appeared to be Elise sitting in the back seat the night before her body was discovered. The suspect we believe is responsible for her kidnapping and homicide remains at large. Then below the article, there's a picture of Elise smiling, clutching the same rag doll that I've seen her with. And next to her picture is a police sketch of a man who bears a striking resemblance to the one that I've been seeing in my home. This is so sad. Did they ever catch the guy? Mr. Robbins shakes his head. I don't believe so. Then he adds, if that little girl's ghost is in your house, I don't think it's because she wants to do you or your boy any harm. I thank him and then head back to my house to get Asher so that we can go to my mom's for dinner. As we start to drive, I tell him, "Hey bud, I found out what happened to Elise and that scary man. You don't have to worry about them anymore. They both passed away a long time ago. It's just their ghosts that you've been seeing. And ghosts can't hurt you." What he says next sends a chill through me and makes me slam on the brakes. But Mommy, he's not dead. Elise just told me that he's still alive and he's hiding somewhere in our house. I think that's what she's been trying to warn us about. I turn the car around and head straight back to my house. When we arrive, I tell Asher to go next door and wait for me at Mrs. Busby's, and I'll be over there soon to get him. Once he's gone, I search the entire house, not wanting to believe what he just told me, but knowing I need to make sure. After checking all of the rooms, I find a hole in Asher's bedroom closet that leads through the walls and up into the attic. That's where I find the man's belongings. Clothes, blankets, and food from our pantry that I hadn't even realized was missing. And wrapped in a plastic shopping bag, I find Elise's little rag doll. He must have kept it as a trophy of some sort. I wonder how long he's been hiding out up here. It couldn't possibly have been for the last 23 years, I think to myself. I mean, I never come up here, except for the one time to see it when we first moved in, but my husband did plenty of times before he passed away because we used the attic for storage. And if he's been here the whole time, that can only mean one thing. The man must have been living in the walls when he wasn't up here in the attic. Just as I head for the steps to make my way downstairs, a pair of hands come out of nowhere and grip me from behind, choking the life out of me. I pry at the strong fingers and manage to get a few of them loose, then gasp for air just as I see Elise out of the corner of my eye walk behind us, crying. Then the next thing I know, both me and the man go tumbling down the stairs. Seeing that he's unconscious, I get up and start to race for the door and reach it just as I see him starting to come to. When I open it, the cops come rushing in, and I thank God that I called them before I came back home, because what Asher said in the car had me so freaked out. "He just tried to kill me," I tell them out of breath, pointing at the man. "And he's the man who murdered Elise Donahue 23 years ago." They place him in handcuffs and walk him out to their police cruiser. Then one of the officers drives them away, and then another comes over to take my statement while CSI search the house and collect evidence. A little while later, I'm sitting out on the porch when one of the officers approaches me and says, "You and your son are very lucky. Today is 23 years to the day that he killed that little girl, and he had the day marked on a calendar up in the attic." "What do you mean, marked?" I ask. "With an X. It's a good thing you two left last night and stayed at that hotel. And if you hadn't called us today, I don't even want to imagine what could have happened. From all of the evidence we collected, I think he was planning on killing you and your son. A feeling of relief and joy come over me as I think, if it wasn't for Elise and all of the times that she scratched me, trying to warn me and get me out of the house, and then her telling Asher today about the man still being alive, I very well could be dead. Asher and I both could be. After everything dies down and the cops leave, with me thinking about all of that, I stand outside next to Asher staring at our house, and the only thing I can say is, thank you, Elise. Don't forget to subscribe for new stories weekly. See you next time on
Nino's Nightmares.
Really? You're supposed to click the like button, not me. Ugh.